Hi guys, today we're going to be looking at the study by Maguire et al. 2000 on taxi drivers, and this is for the OCR A2 psychology spec. Maguire et al.'s study investigates neuroplasticity in the hippocampus. This is a bilateral brain structure, which means that there is a hippocampus on both the right and the left sides of the brain. One of the main roles of the hippocampus is that it helps us to navigate, and this area of the brain is thus important in terms of our spatial memory. Maguire et al. Believe that as the demands of our spatial memory increase, the hippocampus changes to accommodate for this change. They provide evidence for this from animals and birds, as in some species, the hippocampal volume is enlarged during the seasons when demand for spatial ability is the greatest. The researchers note that differences exist between humans with different skills. They claim that no studies have provided evidence as to the source of these differences. Therefore, in this study by Maguire et al., they aim to investigate the plasticity of the brain in London taxi drivers. London taxi drivers were deemed good participants as they have to pass a test known as the knowledge. This involves 2 years being spent learning how to get around London. Therefore, this requires them to make increasing demands on their spatial memory. To investigate the differences in the brain, especially in the hippocampus, in London taxi drivers, and to establish whether compared to controls differences in hippocampal volume would be observed, the study also aimed to further investigate the functions of the hippocampus in spatial memory. Method and design. This study was an experiment that used an independent measures design. The brains of London taxi drivers were compared to controls who weren't taxi drivers. Correlational analysis was also carried out to see if hippocampal changes increased with time as a taxi driver and were thus likely to be environmentally determined. The participants were 16 right-handed male London taxi drivers aged between 32 to 62 with a mean age of 44 years. They were licensed for at least 1.5 years with a mean of 14.3 years and a range of 1.5 to 42 years. The average time that they had spent being on the knowledge was 2 years. All had healthy general medical, neurological and physiological profiles. The control group consisted of 50 right-handed males aged 32 to 62 years, who had been scanned for the MRI database at the Wellcome Department of Cognitive Neurology, University College London. They were selected so that no females, no left-handers, no under 32s or over 62s, and no one with health problems was included. The taxi drivers' brains were scanned using an MRI scanner. These were structural MRI scans designed to investigate the anatomy of the brain and its structure. The scans of the taxi drivers were analysed and compared with the scans of the control participants. The measurement of the brain differences used 2 different techniques. One of these techniques was pixel counting, and this was carried out on the scans of the taxi drivers and 16 age-matched controls taken from the 50 control participants. This was carried out by one experienced person in the technique who was blinded to the participant's identity as taxi drivers or controls and the outcome of the previously used VBM analysis, which I'll talk about in a second. A pixel is a 2D measurement of an area, and thus it was possible to calculate differences by pixel counting slices of the scan. The scan was separated into 26 of these slices, and 24 of these focused on the hippocampus, as follows. The posterior hippocampus, and this was 6 slices, the hippocampus body 12 slices, the anterior hippocampus 6 slices. The second technique used was VBM, voxel-based morphometry, and this was used to measure the grey matter volume and indicate general brain differences between the 2 conditions. A voxel is a 3D measurement of volume that allows a computer program to calculate the volume of an area, i.e. the grey matter present in the brain in the structural MRI scans. VBM analysis confirmed a structural difference in the hippocampi of taxi drivers compared with controls. Pixel counting analysis revealed that there was no difference in the overall volume of the hippocampus between taxi drivers and controls. However, it did show regionally significant difference by side, left and right, of the hippocampus. In the anterior hippocampus, the non-taxi drivers had higher hippocampal volume in the right anterior hippocampus than the left. For the hippocampus body, the taxi drivers showed no difference in overall volume in the hippocampus body compared with controls, but analysis by side showed that non-taxi drivers had higher volume in the right side. In the posterior hippocampus, the taxi drivers generally had a higher volume in their posterior hippocampus than non-taxi drivers. Results. The VBM analysis showed that there was an increase in grey matter in only two areas of the brain, the left and the right hippocampi. There was an increase in grey matter bilaterally of the posterior hippocampi, but a decrease in grey matter bilaterally of the anterior hippocampi. The researchers carried out correlational analysis to see if there was a correlation between the VBM analysis of hippocampal volume and time spent as a taxi driver, including the time spent being on the knowledge. This correlational analysis showed a positive correlation between, namely, the right posterior hippocampus and the time spent as a taxi driver. There was also a negative correlation between the time spent as a taxi driver and the volume of the anterior hippocampus. It's good to take into note that a 42-year-old taxi driver was removed from this analysis, although his results were consistent with their general findings, and this is just because he was much older than the rest of the participants. I think the next youngest person was 28. So that's why they removed him, because he was kind of like an outlier. And here's an example of one of the correlations where the taxi drivers had less volume in their grey matter in the anterior hippocampus as they spent more years being taxi drivers. Conclusions. The researchers conclude that the data presented in this report provides evidence of regionally specific structural differences between the hippocampi of licensed London taxi drivers and those of control subjects. Correlational analysis also confirmed that this difference was related to environmental stimulation. Increases in the posterior hippocampus with respect to time supports the idea that the brain has changed in response to the demands of being a London taxi driver, rather than the idea that they are predisposed to being taxi drivers because they have innate brain differences. Thank you for watching that short presentation. I hope you paused the video, made some notes as you went along, but I'm going to be making some more videos, so please check those out, and thank you for watching.